Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are you all doing out there today? It is a beautiful, beautiful Monday evening. The Aurora Borealis should be out later on tonight. And I am here with Scott Clayton. And he is here to talk to all of us of why he is running for Senate District D. And I will bring him here on the screen here with the both of us. Wait a minute here. Ropes up, hitting the wrong button there. It would have brought him in, but just by himself. There we go. There's Scott. How you doing, Scott?
Doing really good.
And we are today, if you take the time right now, please like and share this video. It would be greatly appreciated. Alaskans need to learn who they are voting for in our upcoming elections. And we need to make sure that we keep Alaskans informed who they are voting for and make sure that they are not electing rhinos back into Juneau that have only one objective, and that is to make sure the special interests keep their pocketbooks well fed off of our PFDs, and it's definitely a hot button election issue here this year. I am going to shut my trap because I could keep talking here forever. You guys all know that. Again, please like and share, and I am going to bring Scott onto the screen by himself. Scott, take a moment here, introduce yourself, let the folks out there in mainstream media land on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube know why you're running, maybe a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and the number one burning question I always like to ask at this part is, what got you into politics in the first place? It is all yours.
Well, great. You know, my family moved up to Alaska from New Mexico in 2004, and we loved it. We fell in love with the state. We stayed here until I went to school in BYU in Idaho, and I studied business there. And it wasn't until after we were separating out of the Marine Corps, I was recently married, and I was talking to my wife about where we wanted to move, and I was really pitching Alaska hard because I knew the people here are great, and I knew it had everything that I really wanted to raise my family here. But this is right during the riots in Portland and New York, and I was really concerned because I saw some of that same stuff happening in Anchorage. And so I remember saying, well, I don't want Alaska to shift purple. This is like our home. This is where I want to sit down roots. And we came back here, and I started working for a company called Pitch 59, and I had a friend who was teaching through the school borough, and they were telling me, this is in the middle of COVID, that teachers were not wanting to come back, and schools were struggling to fill in positions for classrooms. And I thought, well, I can balance kind of both. And I was working at home, and I could kind of occasionally start subbing. And I think we all kind of live under the assumption that everything that happens at school is fine, and our kids, we send them to the schools and public schools, and they get taught and everything's perfect. And when I went there, I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of problems here, and teachers are very aware of the challenges schools face, but they felt like they couldn't do anything. And so to answer your question, the reason I started even considering running is because I wanted to assure myself that as we were experiencing crime increase, and as we were seeing kind of this woke ideology affect different locations, and Anchorage start to kind of be slanted purple, and Alaska industries be smothered, we started to see Alaskans want to leave. They said, why am I going to be here if Alaska is making it harder for us to do this industry, and be here and regulate this. And then I'd go to school board meetings, and I'd say, this isn't just a Mat-Su school problem, this is an Alaska problem. And so the more I researched it, the more I looked into it, the more I said, I had no idea Alaska spent so much money per student. I had no idea. And I had no idea that our student outcomes were so low. I really didn't know. And, I'd go to school and see those things firsthand and say, this is a problem. And then I'd talk to parents and they say, we didn't know either. We just thought that it was our son or daughter that was having these problems. And so, anyways, long story short, when they redistricted and we were District N, I was looking at the open seat in the House and I was looking at the Senate seat, and I looked at the voting records of both, and I started the research, and I said, um, I'm not a politician. I've never done anything in politics. I've just served in the Marine Corps and started businesses and, worked doing digital marketing for Pitch 59, and that was my background. But really, I just loved Alaska. I liked doing Alaska things and wanted to kind of preserve it. So really, I wanted to assure myself that other people felt the same way about education and about businesses and about Alaska and preserving it. And I didn't want it to change. And so that's what got me into the door of seeing it. Some things have changed since I've started, even since I filed. I had no idea how, I want to say corrupt, but it's cliche. It's cliche to say corrupt. I want to say I had no idea how much of a game this was to most politicians, how much of a necessity it was to retain their seat. Where me, if I lose this race, me and my wife, we're going to be just fine. My wife and me, we're going to go on happy, and we're going to hope that whoever wins does the best they can to uphold the values that we hold special. So, but saying that this isn't a life or death position. If I don't get this seat, we're not going to all of a sudden be destitute and homeless, and we have to do this. And I have this personal agenda that, I guess my personal agenda that I bring to this seat is that I don't want to see my son go to public education, public schools, and be babysat like daycare. I want him to learn how to read and write, handwrite. I just had a kid tell me that we were talking about an assignment, and he said, do you want us to handwrite it? And I thought it was weird. And it was weird because it was a skill that's almost disappearing, that kids are finding it more strange that they have to handwrite things, or if they don't have spell check on their phone or computer, or can't use a calculator, that they actually have to think about it. And I think in ways we're failing our kids. But I'm excited to meet and answer any questions, and this is just a wonderful opportunity to talk to Alaskans. So thanks for having me on. Sorry I'll talk too long. I'll keep things much shorter.
Nope. That's what this is all about. We're here to learn about you, and I know when you go and do your airtime on, say, radio and stuff like that, they have their allotted amount of time. They have a specific amount of questions that they want to ask you, and they're hoping to get some sort of response more from the audience than they are from the candidate, other than what they're expecting the candidate to hopefully say that's going to help spur and make it more exciting to watch. Yes. Yeah. And so I've started out every single interview this year with the big burning question, because for many Alaskans, myself included, I feel this is our one chance to actually take control back of our state and put it back into the hands of Alaskans deciding our fates and our future. Where do you stand on ballot measure 1 for Alaska having the Constitutional Convention?
It's a great question. Absolutely for the convention. I'm a yes vote for the convention, and I share it on my Facebook page personally. I tell my friends why we need to have it. It's because of the gridlock. Politicians will not vote things that remove their power. We're voting on the people taking the power back from the legislature and the judicial system that have grown too big, too strong. It's too polarized to get anything done that actually benefits Alaska. Not benefits, but that we really want done. Are they going to go and vote to limit their spending? No, that's what they want. They need that spending to happen, right? So I think right down the line of issue and things that I wish that we get done in the state legislature. I'm thinking, I'm more optimistic that we can get it done via the Constitutional Convention. So yes, I'm in favor of it.
Well, that's a more solid answer than I've received from a lot of those folks out there. Yeah, I have yet to have a single one that I've interviewed, anyways, that has said no to the convention. Only one, maybe. Uh, we're looking at a lot of different issues that always face Alaska. They're currently using the permanent fund dividend, the ERA portion of the fund, to completely pay for government. And I say completely as in the sense more than half of what the budget for government has come from the permanent fund dividend over the last 7 years. This year is the first time that Alaskans actually got to see something that was a little bit bigger, but still only half of what our statutory PFD should have been to begin with. And that's even with including the stimulus that they added on top. If it wasn't for it, we wouldn't even seen half. Where do you stand for the two laws that we have, the statutory PFD law and then SB 26,
We need to repeal,
which is the POMV law?
Yeah, we need to get rid of that. So I'm in favor of a statutory PFD. I think it's been taken for way too long as a slush fund for government spending. I mean, that's like a talking point, but it's true. That's what's really is happening, is our PFD is being used for whatever they want it to be used. And the worst part about that really is, as you go into the legislature, you're saying, what can I get done that builds me up, right? That's wrong. That's not how we should think of this. I'm getting donations from, that trickle in from people. And, having started businesses, I have business accounts where I spend, I work within margins. I swipe my business card for business expenses, and that doesn't make me feel guilty or anything. That's just a part of business. When I swipe my campaign card and I'm spending donations on, sign lumber, on signs, on rack cards, it feels different. There's a weight to it because this is it almost feels like sacred money. And in some ways, I think we've lost the perception that the money that government spends has any special weight to it, that it doesn't mean anything, when in reality this is the people electing you to do good, not for your own reputation, to lift up your name. Look what I can do. And it's almost like you see, if I had a big room of people, I've thought about this and never had the opportunity to do it, but you say, who can come up with a good thing that the government can do? Well, everybody could come up with a single good thing the government could do, like we could buy people cars, but that's not the role of the government. And so a part of this theft of the PFD comes with lawmakers trying to come up with something good they could do that benefits the people, but is that the role of the federal and state government? Is that what they should be doing? And that's wrong. So we'll probably get into more. I could talk for a long time. I gotta watch myself.
No worries, no worries. Like I said, this is all about you getting out where you stand at, because our legislators that we've been having go into Juneau, we've learned this, and I have especially learned this lesson year after year. They go out onto the campaign trail. They make a lot of promises. We're going to accomplish all of these goals. This is why we're going down. We're fighting for this or that. And then they get down to Juneau, they find out what the sausage making process really looks like.
Yeah.
And all of those promises get thrown to the wayside. And us Alaskans that helped campaign or worked our diligence to make sure that we got people we thought were going to work for Alaskans elected, only to find out that when they get down there, the objective becomes get along to play along.
Yeah.
If you go to Juneau, are you there to go along to play along? And I put it this way because we have laws, and our laws state that you follow the laws, but our legislators are above the law. And you're going to be, if elected, which I hope you are, going to Juneau, and you're going to have a lot of laws there on the books that are not being followed, and then you're going to be asked to vote for the final budget. Where do you stand on subjects like that? Are you a lawmaker, or are you a lawbreaker? Is there a fine line there where, like I always hear the excuse, I had to vote for the budget, I'm required to, it's my one job, the one reason why you send me to Juneau, and I'm going, even if it's a bad budget that's breaking the law, you're still got to pass it?
Yeah, that's such a good point, and it's such a good question. It rolls over into so many areas where, and I've heard it too from these people that I hold in high regard, where they say, "Well, I had to," and I just sit and say, "Why? Why did you have to do that if it's wrong?" You know, and I think that it's developed into just, it's been normalized that, yeah, of course, I just vote, and that there's nothing wrong with voting no if you don't believe in it, and I don't know why that's become a point of conflict. And maybe my, quote unquote political career is doomed from the get-go because I'm outspoken. I tell everybody I don't have a problem voting no. If I don't believe in something, I don't mind being the one out of the group that says, no, I don't believe in that. I don't think that's right. It doesn't make sense. That's not what government should do. This is wrong. And so whether it's funding abortion, whether it's a budget, whether it's a bill that everybody supports except for me, I don't have a problem, because I guess I don't have the same leverage being held over me. And I know that some people develop leverage that comes over with seats, and it's hard to imagine a situation where somebody holds something over my head and me go, well, that doesn't matter to me. It's wrong. And I've always viewed it like
if you don't vote this way, we're not going to give your constituents this little bonus construction deal on their road system. They're like KGB, and we're going to withhold it from you. Now, come on, just change that vote to a yes. Get along to play along.
No. And that's a good example of a real case scenario where you just say, well, I'm sorry. If that's what you're leveraging over me as a legislature, we're going to make sure the constituents know that was the thing, and that I'm not going to vote against my conscience, and that's just the way it is. I'm not going to go and trade favors to get into a position of power. That's just the way it is. So, and the more people I've met in this game, it feels like that's what they're doing. They're going down ready with their little bargaining chips that they're ready to go and swatch and switch over and try to trade to get things done that they want to get done. And I think that maybe I have a really libertarian ideology about this, but I don't feel this burning desire that government has to do a bunch of stuff. I think that's wrong. I think small government is good. It's what's truly intended by state government. Government is not supposed to have all the answers to all the problems. And
well, you kind of give me a good segue here into the next question. I'm going to take advantage of
Absolutely,
it right here. Big government taking control. They're dictating everything that occurs within their government agencies that they're in control of. Our school system, Alaska school districts, 54 of them that are out there. We're the largest school district for population size of anywhere within the United States. It costs triple the cost of many places to provide an education. That is the worst results in the nation. Where is your stance on school districts? I hear all the time that we've got to make sure they're well funded so that they can provide an education to our children. Is there any hopes, and I put it this, I kind of throw it out there, is there any hopes that you're the type of candidate that's going to go and take a look at the school system and say,
trim the fat?
Yes, you want the money, but let's reduce you down to say 20 or 17 school districts instead of 54. We're going to eliminate almost 2/3 of the administration cost right there.
Right.
We're going to take that administration cost and move it right back into the classroom and raises for the teachers.
Yep.
I mean, I've done the math. It's about $600 million a year savings by eliminating just that.
And then all of a sudden, you've encouraged good teachers to come into the state while doing that. I think. Trimming the fat, getting federal money out of the school system. We've incentivized all the wrong areas of our kids' education with federal money. It's changed and restructured what and how we're teaching our kids and why we're teaching them. Are we teaching them to do well on tests so that they can get more federal funding in the schools? Is that the only reason that we're teaching them to do well on this test? I think it is. And I think if we say, well, the federal funding is not what our driving focus, it's educating our kids, and it's not this. I've said this before, but I really believe it. I think that the excess of money that goes into school system just creates more distractions for teachers. Teachers have to compete with it. They have to compete with the technology in the schools because it consumes the kids. And, I've been really pleasantly surprised as I talk to upcoming school board members and just trying to gauge what their feelings are and what they thought about this or that, and saying, do you know about these problems we have in school about, distractions and the teachers that are having to compete with phones and computers and the iReady and all these, everything has pros and cons. But the cons are now outweighing all the pros that the technology and the money brought into the classroom if the teachers can't teach. And that's what's happening. The teachers can't teach. So there's tons of fat that we can trim off education through administration, through what we're trying to bring into the classrooms and repair, and that has to be done. But I'm going to just use this time to just say this too. I had made a statement, knowing myself what I was thinking, but I've been able to digest it a little bit better or regurgitate it a little bit better. But I've had kids in school have to write out a budget, and they're given an income, right? An income, it's just a fictitious little, okay, write a budget and use $1,400 a month to break down this budget of items. And they're struggling. They're like, well, rent is this much, and my car payment is this much, and they go down the list of all their expenses, and they say, well, I don't have enough to pay for all of my expenses. And we see this with kids that come to parents with advice about, I can't manage all my expenses and all this stuff. Most of the time we say, well, it's time to get a more skill. We need a new skill that will bring in more money, right? We need revenue to come in. And this is two parts. One part education, one part an analogy for the state. So we're going to talk about the analogy for government. We're saying our budget is tight, and I say I agree. And when we talk about small government and big government, we're not talking about what expenses do we need. I'm talking about what income do we have coming in. What revenue sources for the government make it easier to have not a elaborate list of expenses for the state, but have a generous source of income. And that can be areas that we don't touch, like timber, like our ports. Geographically, Alaska is a much more economical place than LA port for international freight, for the country, for anything.
Well, how do we get around this, though? I mean, right now we're being stranglehold by the federal government.
Right.
If the federal government isn't slowing us down, it's the environmentalists that step in next. If the environmentalists aren't putting up a stink and shutting things down, it's the, excuse my French for cussing, the Alaska Native population putting up their stink that you can't do that, but ignore what we're doing on the lands that we own, doing the exact same thing we're telling you not to do.
Well, you're right, but it's because we keep electing people that don't have backbones, that won't stand up to the federal government and say that we play a pivotal role, the state, not only geographically with our military location, but with our resources that we continually give. And are we at a deficit because of what we give to those, to the federal government? Do they need us more than we need them? I say yes. I say I say the state plays a huge role, and it's time that we stand up to them and say, we're not going to give you everything for nothing.
Well, so, okay. I'm gonna stop you right there because you're trying to answer one of my questions without
let's go back to education. I'll do that part.
Well, without the question being there yet. So.
And I'll wait. So I say, I do say that there's industries, timber industry, there's tons of resources, graphite and cobalt that we haven't really gone after because of regulations and allowing, the federal government to give us carbon taxes and regulations that are just ridiculous, and our oil industry, everything. I'm prepared to look at all of that and think that we could do much, much more with our ports, with the Jones Act, bringing in more industry, more jobs, making Alaska more business friendly. And I'm not trying to be all up in the clouds. That's just the way that we could go. It's exciting to think about because Alaska's
wait a minute. We got started on all of this. It's about a school.
Yes.
And so tie this all together for us because you're moving
into everything.
Yeah, I want to keep the focus there on the school districts.
So, with education, we need to cut down. There's no reason that we need to spend $17,500 per student. A lot of that it goes into administration costs and technology and all this stuff that just doesn't go into the actual classroom.
Which budget are you looking at? Their current one is $22,500 per student.
Oh, and see that's
and that's not including. Well, that's discontinuing what they had put in there for the forward funding.
That's so much money.
Put it closer to $40,000 a student until they removed that back out of their.
So I believe in school choice. I believe that parents should have the right to say what happens to their child, especially with their education. I think it's sad that parents are so desperate to get their kids out of public school. I think that we need to have paths for kids that show a lot of aptitude for trades and not poo-pooing it. We need our trades. Alaska, we have industries that require those, and I think that we can create paths for those kids. A better path for them into those industries.
I just saw an announcement today that 80 brand new jobs are opened up on the slope, right now. 80 of them. They're advertising for people to come to work.
Yep.
Do you know how to use a front end loader? Do you know how to drive heavy equipment? Boy, let me tell you, 20 of those jobs right now are just for them.
And I'll tell you this: they'd probably make more money than they would out of college with a degree. So, and that's the case with most of those industries. Plumbing, welding, electrical, doesn't matter. They make more money than they probably would with a bachelor degree. So, and it's needed everywhere. So I say that we need to do more with education, preparing our kids for actual success, not just success in a test. That when they leave high school and you say, what are you going to do after high school? I'm going to play video games. I'm going to go and live in my mom's basement, and we need to prepare them for the real world. And part of that might be sitting down and saying, well, what's the plan after it? This is a job. I think we give 9 credits to kids in high school that they can do whatever they want. And I think at least one of those credits could be put towards a professional class. Half of it could be where you learn how to write a resume, how to be in an interview, how to the other half could be finances, where you learn about student debt, about how to operate a budget, how to, basic life skills, because it used to be taught in school.
It used to be a requirement. Now
Right.
you can still do it, but it's an elective class now, and most kids opt not to take that elective.
And we don't set them up for success after high school. And this is right during a very vulnerable time in life where they could either, you know, derail and go off the tracks, or they could succeed. And we're seeing a lot of kids go off the tracks. So I'll stop answering all the questions I don't know. I'll wait for you.
So, okay, you brought in a lot of the question that I had there is the school districts themselves. There's got to be that they don't fund themselves. They're not an institute that's making money. We're not paying those teachers to be there directly out of our own paychecks to be doing this service for us all. So they got to get their money somewhere. You touched upon that it comes from state, local funding from our property taxes directly from our boroughs or districts that we live in. And then you get the federal funding that is attached on top of that. The Supreme Court of the United States declared that the money is now to follow the student when they go to school, but Alaska's Supreme Court stepped in the middle of this directly after that was passed by our U.S. Supreme Court and said, oh, no. They're not going to get all of that money. No, they're going to leave most of it inside of the public school system. And if you choose to put your child into a charter school or homeschool, only a small portion of that is now going to follow the student.
Isn't it a perfect example of greed? Of the state grabbing money that's not there for their own purposes?
It's for the children.
Whose benefit do they have in mind? Do they have the child's benefit? Or is it to sustain an industry, a system of revenue, right?
Quid pro quo.
Exactly, and it's wrong. I go back to my statement that it's sad that parents are desperate to get their kids out of public school. And it's not just people like I don't know like a unique group that is all anti-public school. It's everybody that I meet. All the parents that I meet door to door, my big kicker is education. And without fail, in District 28 and 27, maybe it's the only two districts in the state that feel this way. I'm getting over and over resounding feelings about public school is a nightmare.
We are here in the Valley. I'll guarantee you there is not a parent out there, well, you know, for the general populace anyways, that doesn't care about where their kids' education is going. And it's very evident with what we're seeing this year, especially within our school districts here.
Right.
They've now readdressing the issue of the 2015 law for the open bathrooms. Identify however you want, pick the bathroom you want to go into, you're all set. That's being directly confronted here in the Mat-Su. Colony High School has started their own GoFundMe so that they can build their own bathroom to accommodate those that want to identify however they identify, which single-use bathrooms already exist. I don't know why we got to build another big bathroom just for that. And then we've got Anchorage school districts that recently had testimony from one of the parents there stating that here's this book by Juno Dawson. And this book is gay is the name of the book itself, and it's very graphic. I mean,
unbelievable.
I won't even say what they said other than it's guys talking about how to satisfy other guys.
It's just so graphic and unbelievable. The fact that it's in there,
and it's in elementary schools.
Elementary schools. The big thing is why not just go for the school board, Scott? Why not just stick into Mat-Su Valley? I have family in Anilchik. You know, my parents live in Anilchik. I have friends in Keene. I have friends in Nenana. I have friends in Delta. I have friends all over the state. And they're saying the same thing. So should I focus on Wasilla and just say, Wasilla will be preserved. It'll be a little haven of conservatism while the rest of the state is on fire?
Oh, hell no.
No. Whatever happens in Anchorage, whatever happens all over, will start to, in Fairbanks, will trickle all throughout the state. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing if we keep to our own and say we will hold the line right on the flats over in Palmer. We'll hold the line and just preserve our little sanctuary. It doesn't work that way. It's a slow creep. And if we do that, if we stay quiet and say we're not going to make noise here, the rest of the state, they will creep in. And we
we're
see
seeing it everywhere. I mean,
Matsu Health Foundation.
Palmer is a great example
Right.
of the creep of Anchorage
Right.
moving out into the valley.
Absolutely.
So many controversies over the last 3-4 years now that have just keep compounding, and it's the same.
That's how Eagle River was. Eagle River is creeping. They're creeping purple, and people are surprised. How is this happening? It's because if you keep to your own and say, I'm just going to worry about me and mine, it doesn't work that way. The left is too strategic and they're too aggressive like that. We can't be a quiet majority anymore.
I feel sorry for Eagle River this election season.
Too.
They've got Dan Sandler and Kelly Merrick, and the other candidates like Sharon Jackson and Ken McCarthy and people like that are all completely being ignored because the big unions, NEA of Alaska, Alaska AFL-CIO, they've all put their backings behind these candidates. Sandler is even on record at one of the debates that I had live streamed saying that he is all for the binding caucus selling out his voices and votes, and that the PFD belongs to them, and whatever's left over after the government gets taken care of, maybe we'll give you one.
The whole thing is it's just, we can't be gaslit. We can't say, it's not happening. It is happening. And just like the Matsu School Board creating and I forget the bill name, I think it's SB 145, that protected female sports in the Valley. Well done. You did great. And I was so happy that our borough took the stand. We were proactive. And a lot of testimony came up saying, well, it's not a problem yet. Why are we making this bill? We have one trans athlete. They were saying this isn't a problem in the Valley. Correct. We're proactive. Yeah, we are proactively protecting. And when people say that about Alaska, this isn't a huge problem. Why are we need to be proactive. And
well, they keep giving these claims that there's never been a case in Alaska bull. There's been wrestlers, there's been runners. We've already watched our women, our girls in Alaska.
And are we going to just let it happen?
Because
are we going to just sit back and wait till it happens? So we can't keep electing people that will allow it to happen to trade for whatever they want to do. And so it goes
just
back
because it didn't happen in your community yet doesn't mean it hasn't happened elsewhere already.
Right. And so the beliefs I believe are not just good for my household, my Wasilla, my school board. I believe that they are good for Alaska. And,
So this kind of brings up the subject of, we had all the money that I described earlier, the state, the local, and the federal money all combined. The Matsu School District, by doing what they did, has eliminated a portion of their funding will no longer be coming to them this next school season because of the votes that they have made this year from federal funding and state contribution that matches that same federal funding.
Right.
So you as a legislator, you get down to Juneau, how do we make up for this? I mean, we're talking in some cases, if we're to talk about Anchorage or the Matsu, the biggest districts in the state, you cut a couple $1 million off of that budget, $5 million, $10 million off of that budget.
That's a lot of administration that are going to get unemployed, right? Right. And that's what we see. The fear isn't with the students not getting what they need. That's not what we're talking about. Are we people? They use fear in shrinking our budget and saying, well, if we drop $1 from our school budget, all of a sudden kids aren't going to be taught. What? That's not true. That just means that our administration isn't going to be bloated anymore. We're not going to have unnecessary technology. Teachers over and over again talk about the unnecessary funds, and it's interesting because unionized officials have come out and said, I had to wait until I wasn't in the position I was in to get fired for saying this, but please don't spend money in the school system. We don't need it. It's unnecessary to do our job. And I think good teachers will tell you that too.
Well, wait a minute, if they needed so much money, and I love this about the school board meeting or the forum that I was at here the other day, school teachers that are in the union, the NEA of Alaska, their annual dues are somewhere just a hair over $1,000 is what I was being informed. We've got roughly 20,000 NEA members that are a part of that organization. I think their numbers are closer to 22,000, but I crunched the numbers just for the 20,000.
Yeah.
That's $20 million a year. $20 million a year. Our teachers, our school administration in Alaska is giving over to this union, and they spent $500,000 of this just this year to tell us all to vote no on changing our constitution, because they know if Alaskans take control of the state, they're going to have to start being accountability for a proper education.
It's a power. It's those with power will never freely give it up. Correct. And like, it doesn't matter whether it's the unions. It doesn't matter whether it's medical. It doesn't matter what it is. Those in power are so reluctant to give up their power, because that's what it's all about, right? I will put forth and support, and I don't have the numbers ready to present.
Okay.
A thinner budget.
We're going to come back to the school subject, because there's another question that I have, normally I ask this towards the end of the interview, but we've delved way too deep into the other subject
It's so necessary, though. It's so necessary.
I can't ignore the question now.
Yeah.
I asked you a little earlier in the interview, are you a lawmaker or are you a lawbreaker, and how would you vote? Currently, right now, our federal government controls the majority, 60% of the lands here in Alaska, and the other 38% is in the control of our local government, and then 2% of it is basically in the hands of Alaskans, excluding what in the local government, I include that as also in the native government and their sovereignty for the land that they privately own. Alaska natives are able to develop up their lands. They can pretty much do whatever they want because they are a sovereign nation. They have no accountability to the federal regulations whatsoever. They're developing up mines onto properties that have had no oversight in the regards to the environmentalists filing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to stop them from doing this. Why are we as Alaskans even listening to the federal government anymore? And I state it this way, as we've got the law for marijuana here in Alaska. It's federally, it's illegal, but we as a state, we're selling it openly. We've got pot stores everywhere. We've got cultivation plants all over the place. You can smell it as you're driving down the road. You can pinpoint where they're at just by the smell that's in the air as you're going. And we've got down in the lower 48, and I'm going to include Anchorage as part of this fold. Illegal immigration and illegal alien sanctuary cities. They're completely bypassing the federal government, saying, screw you, we're not going to follow the laws of the land and send these illegal aliens back to the place that they came from. They're here illegally. They've broken the law. We're not going to lock them up. We're going to give them welfare benefits in the works.
No accountability. Right.
Flipping the middle finger at the federal government every single time. Yet here we are in Alaska, a land resource state. Our resources is what pays for our government, and we can't develop up our own lands. Why are we just not telling our federal government, here's the middle finger, just like we do when it comes time for our marijuana laws, and start developing up our resources?
Well, we need to be able to say, we don't want what you're selling in return. We don't need it. We are energy independent. We can manage our own finances. We don't need what you're selling. You need us more than we need you. And right now there's just too much leverage over people that want to pass their own agendas via what the federal government is offering them. I'll let you finish your question. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I hear on the alternative that if we do this, we're going to lose the military up here, which I always kind of it makes me bust up laughing. It's like belly roll time. You're joking, right?
Yeah.
So we know we're not going to lose our military. That's another one of those red herrings, false flag type arguments out there. That's just BS.
Correct.
they're not going to cut Alaska off by disowning us, because they don't want us to become our own sovereign state withdrawn from the United States.
It's
because
too many resources that they've been missing on.
Right, they don't want to lose out on that.
Right.
There's really not much that they could do to us, even if they said we're going to cut you off funding financially. We just go directly to the miners, the oil companies, and everything else, and say, hey, you know what? You guys are more than welcome to drill. We have the safety regulations that we have had in place. We're not changing a single item on that. In fact, if we can make them stiffer, I'm more than happy to do that. But I want you drilling that oil. I want that mine developed. I mean,
absolutely. The federal government's overreach into Alaska has been for a long time abusive, and I think that, like I said before, politicians are, I mean, I'm a single vote, right? I don't control the legislature, I wouldn't control the Senate, but as for me, I don't see the draw, the leverage of the federal government, what they're offering. I think the state needs to take back their power. And it's not just Alaska, we see it all over the country, that the states true intention, their true power, they were supposed to be more powerful than the federal government. And it's completely backwards. The federal government is becoming intrusive in all these decisions, whether it be abortion. It should have been with the states. People should be able to choose where they live because of how they want to live. And, you know, if you want to live in Alaska, news to you, it's going to be different than California. And, you know, if you wanted to live a California lifestyle in Alaska, that's just not how it works. And so I like the fact that there's differentiation between states. And the federal government trying to say what's right for California needs to be right for Alaska. The regulations that we impose for here to give you this, we just don't want it. We don't need it. Alaska doesn't need it. And just like in the schools, we don't need their money.
I mean, if we're to follow California, that means we're going all electric by 3035.
That'd just be a joke.
And
but don't charge your car.
Well, you're
but
basically
don't charge your car right now.
Here's your football stadium times 100,000. We're exaggerating here, but that's basically what you would need to have set up all over the place, just to keep those electric cars heated and charging
it's
at
such an oversight.
40 below zero.
It's just ridiculous. No, it's just ridiculous. I think when I was rolling a couple questions ago, really getting hot heavy, the reason I do that is because I get excited when I was looking at the transportation rally over at the Menard, and I was looking at, you know, some of the projects we have outlined, or even just talked about things that we could have for the Mackenzie Willow project, you know, all this infrastructure that we could bring to the state. I get excited. I think that's cool. When I see a new building in the valley coming up, I think that's
they're popping
awesome.
up everywhere.
They're popping
fast.
up everywhere. I love it. I think Alaska has more potential than anybody gives it credit for. I think, and that's exciting. And I think if we continue to just give all of our resources and power to the federal government and say, use us how you will, it's no good.
All right, we've touched upon the second biggest budget item that we have in Alaska. The biggest budget item that we have in Alaska is our welfare system, or as a lot of people call it, healthcare. Pre-pandemic, we had roughly about 18% of Alaska's population was living on welfare of one form or another.
Absolutely.
And now, thanks to the pandemic, we now have 35% of Alaska, was the last report. This came from, I believe, Shelley Hughes during a convention here the other day.
Right.
And
not just any package too, not just welfare, the most expensive and elaborate package that we could possibly choose.
Yes.
Where's the incentive to go off? I'll tell you what, we have created such a lavish welfare system. Why go anywhere else?
I mean, Walker kind of gave us our death sentence when he did the executive order,
right.
so to speak, the governor's version of it.
And
the tough unilaterally gave us the expansion package on Obamacare.
Right. Well, and the tough call is people think that you're savage by saying no. This is not the government's role. Healthcare is not a right. that, we are blessed to live in a place where Medicaid does exist for extremely sad situation. That's great.
What it's meant for.
That's what it's meant for. It's not meant for all of the general public of the lowest income bracket gets Medicaid. So absolutely, there needs to be a real defined cutoff, and I don't think we need to have this elaborate package. This needs to be
let alone a package that you already, because of your race,
right,
are already 100% paid for by our federal government,
right,
and yet you go and use Medicaid.
Right. This is not an expense the state should incur at all.
It drives me nuts to know that my daughter, who's American Indian, that when I go in there, they want to know what Medicaid or other insurance policies I have for her are, and I look at them and I say, I have yours. And they give me this nasty look like, oh, well, okay, and they still provide me the same quality service that they provide me if I had any of those other programs.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was living at a poverty level that I get Medicare, they're going to want that first before they ever bill the federal government for their portion.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. I think, and this kind of rolls into our homeless problem, because I think we've created an industry like that. And I forget who I was talking to about this, how it was the money being spent on homeless, not the homeless individuals, but on the caregivers and on the nonprofits and on the social workers. It's staggering. Where's the incentive to solve anything? Because it's a vibrant way to employ people. And the same could be said with healthcare. I just listened to something today that talked about healthcare, and there's no incentive to get people healthy. We have sick care. We want people to be on the system, be dependent on the government, be dependent on the state and federal government, and it's backwards. Goes back to what I said to begin with, how a lot of people turn to the government, the state and federal government, to solve problems that they shouldn't solve. And that's kind of the answer for, if someone approaches me and say, what should the state government do for depression? And it's just like, man, the state government wasn't built to solve those kind of problems, and
that's what the social network, that's what churches were all about. That's what our communities were about.
Yes.
That's why people go to get their doctorates and spend 8 years in school to become a clinician and say, lay back on my couch and tell me your woes.
Right, and you know what doesn't do it any favors is when we have a poor education system, which goes back to whether it's mental health, homelessness, whether it's unemployment. Okay, how did we set up all of those individuals for success? And so even though it's not a solution,
so here's the question: how are you going to fix it?
Yeah,
I mean, what are you going to? I mean,
I haven't
you've given me a great politician lines here, but you've
this is just the truth. This is just as honest as it can get, and I don't profess to be I wasn't a politician. I didn't study this. I don't know. I'm just like a normal Alaskan, and so I'd be talking to you on the river and like that. We'd be talking about it. Just what do you think we should do? The honest truth is, I just don't know. I haven't heard a solution that makes sense yet from anybody. I've asked politicians. I've asked people that I work with. I've asked everybody. I said, what should we do? The only solution I can think of, the only thing that seems not practical, the only thing that we have control over right now is we have to set kids up for success early on to prevent the problem. And as for the problem right now, there are logistics. I think we do a disservice for the industry.
We're not setting our children up for that yet.
But also, don't incentivize the continuation of the problem. And those two solutions kind of go hand in hand, right? So we say with homeless, why are we giving tons of money to keep the problem going? The problem, it makes sense how somebody can self-medicate, get in a self-destructive mindset, and kind of become, there seems to be 2 dozen paths that are all different, kind of entwined, that lead to that direction.
Palmer just had a very scary statistics given by the police chief out of there. They had a vagrants forum with the deputy council.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the council, the second person in charge of the city council, and Pam Mellon. And they were having the vagrancy problem. They were discussing it. The police chief was there describing it. And they've had like 2,000 incidents that occurred last year. 1,000 of the incidents that they had to respond to was all caused by 9 individuals. The same 9 people were the cause of 1,000 of those 2,000 calls.
That goes into our crime and bail reform, how we're releasing the same, repeat offenders, and that's our judicial system. That's ones that don't want to hold accountable. That's a society problem. We are not wanting to offend, not wanting to hold people accountable for their individual actions, whether it be failing in a school subject. We don't want to actually hold them accountable. You have not proven that you are proficient in reading, writing, this, but we're still going to pass you forward. You have proven that you are committing crime time after time. You've been arrested. You've been put in prison. We're not going to hold you accountable. They do it again.
Oh, I'm going to I got to throw this in there.
Yeah.
Accountability. They're not able to read. They're not getting the education, and they still keep passing them through. We just had the read by 3. Pass, and there is no teeth in it. There is no accountability. There's nothing in it that tells them that if you don't succeed and by 3, and if they're not reading at grade level or above by that grade.
Which my suggestion would be, and I forget which state it is, we need a test, a middle school test, a high school test, not associated or linked to funding. This is a this is a proficiency test. Have you completed the requirements for the school? Will prove that you are proficient in them. It's not associated to federal or state funding, but if all of a sudden a school in Anchorage has half their students that are showing that they're not proficient because the school has been curtailing their curriculum to federal funding testing, well, now we know what's happening. We see on an individual level, well, you're not teaching your students. This is a problem. And we're going to fund you 100%. All of the state money that you ask for this and that. So, and I know I have a way to branch over.
We're doing that already. I mean, the DIE program that they got going
just
on, the diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I will never say it the correct way because as the name I call it, DIE, needs to die.
Yeah, it does.
And it was just a rebranding of CRT. Anchorage School District, they passed it during the pandemic. I watched it. I streamed it live, them taking the vote to pass diversity, equity, and inclusion into the classrooms there.
I believe it's
And now we're seeing it with the books that are on the bookshelves for elementary kids to read.
I believe that this is on its way out. I believe that this is my personal opinion that enough parents that are not normally involved have come out and as outspoken against it and are aware that it's happening. I'm hopeful. I am hopeful.
But it's mandated at a federal level right now, which is what's made it so difficult to remove. I mean, the Matsu is just finding out what happened in 2015.
If we elect moderates that think that it's not as a big issue, then it's going to go through. In the state of Alaska, we need people that know and exactly what it is.
So it's like so those that are going to vote for Murkowski, they're
going to go in and say, sure, that's not a big problem. Let's just keep it in. We need to elect people that say, no, I know what that is. I know, and it's not in our state. We get enough of those. Absolutely. As far as I go, I mean, I can talk big and say, no, we're going to get it out. I would vote it out. I would fight, to the death. I would fight to get it out.
I had a question that was the Fairbanks school had the school board candidates in front of them. It was a high school, and they were having a panel debate where they were answering the questions of the students. And one of the questions there was about pronouns and things like that. And 3 of the candidates there gave I'm the woke answer, that every parent with a decency of values for their children and their upbringing would 100% reject. And only one of them there gave the partially correct answer, but never once condemned it being within the schools, just said that he questioned the validity behind what they were doing.
No, it's just wrong. It's wrong for society. It's destructive. It
the
ruins.
One that gave the most woke answer at that debate happened to be who they elected here in October.
It's just disappointing. And you know what? Sometimes, I mean, there's little that we can do, either of us, for Fairbanks, for them doing that. But sometimes when people get what they ask for good and hard, you know, you just hope that they learn the lesson and change, because they know it's destructive, like voting for Biden. You know, I hope that people get what they voted for good and hard and realize, wow, I messed up. And if we continue to vote for people like that, not just on a federal level, but on a state level too, people that will compromise, that will trade, that will think that things like diversion, inclusion, equity
for
are
the
not a big
Biden
deal.
voters, for those that sadly make $100,000 or more a year, and that they're not quite seeing the impacts yet of the Biden inflation.
Yeah.
Because this is just, okay, that just means one dinner a month that I can't go to, but the other 29 days during the month are still safe at this point. Oh, that's 2 dinners that
You
I'm
know
missing
who I
out
feel
on.
really bad for? And, you know, a lot of my friends are retired on fixed incomes. And that's who it's affecting a lot right now. And it's sad because they worked so hard to get where they are, and all of a sudden they're affected by dumb decisions of today.
My mom...
Stupid policies. And it's hard to watch because they plan right.
My mom just had to downsize. She had to sell her house because she could no longer afford to live there, even though the house was completely paid for.
And they did things right. They did everything they were supposed to.
Yep.
And you know, it's a personal issue for me because of people, friends I know personally, that are struggling because, and it's needless, because of dumb decisions. Our politicians, it's like a game.
Yeah, it was.
And it's a game
the
that's
property
affecting
taxes
them.
that outdid her.
Which
I mean,
I
they
was
kept
going to
raising
mention
them by
property
triple.
taxes. You know, right now, property taxes have become almost a slush fund for state for our boroughs.
Local governments,
they've become like a slush fund. And you know, I ask people, I want to talk less at doors when I go and talk to people. I want to hear and see if there's a common theme in our districts that I've heard time and time again. Besides PFD, everybody's pretty dang on board with that. If you're, you know, against the PFD, you need to get out of the state of Alaska. But time and time again, it's property tax. Property tax is being used as a weapon. Not a weapon. It's overreach.
It is.
And it's becoming not basically like a state tax.
It's like my own property here. I got this year's property tax, and I just about got floored looking at that going,
it's just unbelievable.
I had an inspector that I brought in from the borough. They came out, they inspected my property. The last time I got my property taxes lowered down because they had me overinflated by double of what my property was worth. Well, this year, they nearly doubled my property tax again from where it was at. And I'm going, wait a minute here. There has been no substantial improvement on this property to justify doubling my property tax again. What the hell is going on?
What it is it's increasing because of the spending. They just basically use it as a buffer.
Well, they're basing my property's value on what other houses within my area have sold for.
It's just ridiculous.
And that's, I mean...
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
You can't do that. I mean, one property here in the valley is not worth what another property is. I'll guarantee it. My neighbor lives in a shack.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the other. That's the other thing that's really kind of on. It's in the air, and not a lot of people are aware about it. But the talk right now is on introducing the state tax. That it's finally time that we're looking at a huge principal amount of our permanent fund. You know, that we could improve our state with, and we could just introduce a state tax and become like every other state. And
I am more than happy to impose a state tax the moment that they bring control under the education and healthcare budget out there and cut down at least a minimum of 1/3
of
But
the
I would
government
rather see
spending.
a half of
And
government
it just wouldn't happen.
just go poof.
You know, it just wouldn't happen. Now the spending, I'm such a huge fan of small government. I mean, man, I wish that we could just get a chart out and say these are the fundamental purposes of the state government. And right now, we're focused on everything but those, like education. Education, the fact that we're failing our kids and that they're doing so poorly, that's like one of the primary roles of the state government, and we're lacking in it. And you want to talk about this and that don't matter? So it's time to get back to the basics, you know, and we're letting them down, we're failing them, and it's going to impact us down the road when we have an entire generation of uneducated kids with no skills and industries that are dying because we're smothering them, and they're moving to other greener pastures in the lower 48 or wherever. But you know, if we don't change our trajectory, this is not sustainable, which is why we need a constitutional convention. We need a course change. And we can't elect the same people that like the status quo. They love it. They love the going along to come
That's
along.
why they got $3 million on the defend our Constitution.
Yeah.
So they claim, well, no,
the fear-mongering.
it's to defend your pork budgets is
Yeah.
what they should rename that
Every time I watch those ads that come out, the no on one, I just sit there and say, what fear they're passing around. It almost looks desperate. You know what I mean? Any of those ads just look desperate. Please don't take our power.
I'm watching TV yesterday. I had it playing in the background. I'm working on a video, and I kind of hinted at to you earlier before the interview started.
Yeah.
And in the background, and every time it went to a commercial, and I'm watching the free stuff. I'm not one of those people that pays for Hulu or Netflix. I watch only free channels all day long, or I pop on YouTube and get on to the news channels and have them streaming to me that way.
You bet.
Why pay for something that you can get for free as long as you pay for your internet?
Yeah.
So, but every time a commercial came on, there was a pattern, and it started about 11 o'clock in the morning yesterday.
Mary Pelitola one?
And that was one of them.
Yep.
And I was watching it, and because I wake up, I'm an early bird. I wake up about 6 o'clock every morning, no matter what day of the week it is.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there listening to the television in the background, and I began to notice a part about, like I said, 11 o'clock in the morning. And it went all the way up until 10 o'clock at night before the commercial pattern changed, and it was no longer doing it. First it was convention. No. The Defend Our Constitution
Lisa Murkowski was probably in there.
Not as much as you think. It was Mary Patola was directly after the Defend Our Constitution, and then they would throw in a Murkowski here and there. She didn't quite have it.
Right.
Sarah Palin's own website, palin.com, and I'm reading an article that she put out there the other day, and every ad that was within her article was for Mary Patola. Breitbart. Every ad that I'm running into is Mary Patola.
I'm getting texts and
Fox
calls
News.
every day. Every day I look at my phone, I get 5 messages from some text campaign about voting for Mary. I get calls from people. I'm blown away at all the advertising that's going there. The dark money is flooding into our state like we can't imagine, and it's because we are on the brink of taking that power back, which is a good thing, and they're scared.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that enough people. It's why I'm running my race. I'm also passing out flyers for yes on convention, and when I hold signs, my right hand has my sign, my left sign is a yes on the convention. So and it's because it's important. It's absolutely important.
So what do you think about our judicial branch and
absolutely corrupt.
Their power that they're influencing our elections?
Right.
They started in 2020.
It's a good old Boys Club. Where's their oversight? Where's their oversight they've become much stronger than it was intended. And now it wouldn't even matter what bills we put forth or make. We could have an excellent pro-life bill that's just outstanding, and all of a sudden it's not upheld because the judicial say it's not lawful. right? That's what we're facing. It doesn't matter what what laws we put forth if our judicial system won't do it. And right now, it's a left-leaning party that just hires their own friends. So there needs to be oversight, and I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, whether the legislature needs to be involved in the process, although I think that could be a solution.
I'm for the DC model of
testimony and
of electing judges.
Yeah.
But
which is not a bad idea. I mean,
but I'm not for the rule of the 51%. I say it's got to be at least 60%.
Yeah.
Or higher for a passing threshold for our judge.
Which would be a good safeguard. But the whole point of that, and I agree, the whole point of that is just our judicial system right now is so secretive.
Four judges deciding, and 3 non-judges that get their opinion heard, but their voices really don't matter in the end because the 4 judges are picking who they want.
So that's a problem that needs to be looked at, if not by the legislature, by the Constitutional Convention.
Well, we already know legislators aren't going to do it.
Yeah, they're too directly affected by it. But
yeah, I mean that's the reason why we got people like John Coghill and Kathy Giesel and all of them who are running for office or not running for office, depending on which name I threw out there now.
Yeah, and
that are all for the no ConCon because they know the power to lose.
That's their power. So and you know, when I started this, I was saying, you know, I came in with just pretty simple intentions about education and just saying what's good for, you know, Matsu is good for Alaska kind of thing. And that's really what my focus was, in saying, well, I mean, if I can work really hard to improve our you know, my future, I have a toddler and a little baby, but they're going to be going to school, and I want that school system to be excellent. I don't want to have to worry about taking them out of public school. That's just not where I want to be. But when I started to look at our legislature and the process and binding caucus and all these areas of corruption, to me, it's just corruption. I thought, man, this is just not how it's supposed to be. It's a game. Whether it be our 90-day session, right, which it's supposed to be 90 days, and now it's a laughable thing. Is it going to be 90 days? No, it's not.
Is it going to be 90? Is it going to be 100?
No, it's going to be 120 with special sessions.
That all depends. Is it an election year or not? If it's not an election year, no special sessions. We're going to be out of there with it. But we'll go to 120 still.
Right, and that's the thing, is that we need to roll it back and say no. And we know the legislature's not going to be voting on those issues that directly affect them, right? So I've said this in debates. I've said this, you know, pretty openly. I'm okay with term limits. I would love to see term limits put on committee seats. I think when you have somebody in the finance committee for 30 years wielding it like a sword, chopping off heads that come up, every bill has to go through the finance committee. And so what they're going to do is they're just going to sit there and hold that over you. Well, I'm not going to pass this and that.
Are you talking about Bert Stedman there, or someone along those lines? The recently retired Natasha von Imhoff, whose $1 billion Rasmussen Foundation gets so much money from the state, local,
but isn't that
federal,
true? And you know, it's like being in office for 20 years is not.
Wait a minute. The candidate you're running against, the incumbent David Wilson, and making sure his health care is
and I don't want to say anything bad about him. You know,
I will.
But the thing is that's how it works. And you know, being in office for 20 years is not inherently the wrong choice if you're doing good. And you know, like, if people see, no, he's serving us great, he's doing good, like that seems fine, and as long as he's elected and not, you know, if we've ironed out all of the kinks in our ranked choice voting and all this, you know, the binding caucus, if it's a true election, or elections are restructured and we get rid of our Dominion machines and all that stuff, if we do that, it doesn't seem bad that they're in for 20 years. However, I'd like to see less power in the committee being wielded, and that's kind of what I would put forward.
I never did get anything clear enough to the actual people that are watching here, but you're not a Democrat.
No.
And to be honest, I've never looked up your party affiliation, so bear with me here.
Sure.
You're not a Republican.
I'm flattered because it's like that's
you're not a Republican based on some of the things that you have said here today. This is my impression that I'm getting. You don't classify yourself as an independent, but you are more of an independent than you are what you affiliate to, which would be the Libertarian Party.
no. I'm a Republican. I'm declared Republican. I
You
run
are.
as a Republican.
Okay.
Yep. I just lean libertarian because I believe that Republicans spend like crazy, and I don't like that. Like, Donald Trump to me was amazing. Although he spent like crazy, and it bothered me, even though he did great. And so my one critique of Donald Trump was, you can't get off and say we need to shrink government and then spend that much money.
Well,
And
wait a second. I'm going to throw something out there that most people overlook. Did you see the GDP while he was in office compared to the spending?
No, the numbers were amazing.
He was bringing in more than he
his
was
spending
putting
was
out the door
calculated, unlike Biden.
until
And I think their spending was completely different. But as believing in small government, that the government's role in a normal life should be minimal. That's where you say, oh my gosh, I wish that there was smaller intervention with the state and federal government. And
he had the same problem that Governor Dunleavy had when he took office. I mean, President Trump, when he took office, he took all those at-will employees and he says, we're cleaning house. And the next thing you know, he was being sued left and right, and all of these at-will employees were getting to keep their jobs, just like Governor Dunleavy. They claimed that Dunleavy did a loyalty test to be able to keep your job, and got sued by the crazy person out there. And yes, they can claim whatever they want, but I've read the stuff that they put out there, and only a far left extreme lunatic would write what they put out there for everyone to read.
It's true.
But they still got paid to be an at-will employee to get fired, which technically by law, an at-will employee, you need absolutely no reason to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
We just no longer need your services, and that should be the end of the story. If he would have been able to cleanse the swamp up front, something that our governor here tried to do and got stopped. Our governor is basically nothing more than a figurehead, it feels like, anymore.
And that's a shame, because you see what's happening in Florida, and you say, we could do that if we had strength in Alaska. We could do proactive things in it. It's hard to watch.
If we had a legislative body that would actually stand behind the governor.
Well, and we need a unified Republican caucus. Right now, the Republicans seem to be just separated, both in the state and in the Senate and the House. Just separate. We need a unified Senate. Right now, it just seems like dysfunction. We just keep electing.
The years I've been paying attention to
We keep electing
politics.
the same people. They go down. They don't get anything done. It's just chaos, and it's just backstabbing, and it's personal agendas, secret stuff. And I'm not surprised by that, because we keep on electing the same people.
Backdoor, behind closed doors, meetings, working together with the other body to push the agenda that doesn't match what all Alaskans want, but matches what those special interests they're lobbied by to do.
No, it's interesting. I want to go back to this, because I've never been even accused or not accused, but labeled anything but a Republican, and it's actually flattering, because, Well,
see, and it's a lot of the things you say, I wouldn't. The reason why I said I wouldn't place you as being a Republican is because Republicans, I'll be honest, I'm not a Republican. I'm not affiliated to any party. I'm not even classified as an independent.
A lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are saying, I see too much of what I don't like happening to the Republican Party, like the state's GOP.
But if I was to run for
is moderate. Yeah, they're saying, I'm ready to, and this is what's disappointing, is that a lot of money is going into our state's GOP, and then it's saying, we're gonna try to play the game ourselves, so we need to elect moderates so that are willing to compromise on issues so that we can get things done to go along, instead of taking a stand and actually saying, no, this is fundamental beliefs here we're gonna stand up for.
Actually, fight for what the motto.
Yeah, I feel
what you sign onto the party for.
It's not the Republican, that I know that are changing. It's the party itself that's becoming that's changing.
I mean, if we would have took the party 20 years ago and told the Republicans, okay, here's your motto, which is has not changed,
right,
and told them
I'm
we're
a
going to spend
Reagan Republican,
and we're going to spend $18 billion just because we have it.
Yep.
That they would have looked at you and said, hell no, we're not doing that. I mean, that we didn't get $29 billion saved up in their SBR, CBR accounts that was in government's control, their version of our PFD. They had $29 billion in both of them at one point. And over just slightly over a decade, they spent that all away, and now are spending the ERA of the permanent fund.
And they want to spend the principal.
They do.
They look at that amount of money and they just say the things we could do. You know,
the only way they're ever going to be able
things we could do, and it just
the only way they'll ever touch that is to change the Constitution.
Which know what, I'll tell you what.
So the Defend Our Constitution group, they should be advocating for this so that they can get their hands onto that money.
I hope that Alaskans preserve. You know, this goes past my generation and my kids and their kids. I hope they have the foresight to see that this is a gift that we got to preserve and be able to manage it better than we have been.
I mean, that's why my dad made this his last tour from Nam was Alaska, because we're talking 66, I believe, is when he came here, 67, somewhere in there.
It's forward thinking.
And he saw the oil beam going on, and the Prudhoe Bay was just starting to develop, and he goes, this is where I want to go. The frontier is here. Even
from that time period to now, it's disappointing what the state has done with what they've been given, with what we could be. And, you know, I've listened to all our other politicians talk about how we're 10 years behind what we need to be. That's because of the inaction of the state and the House. This is our fault.
The natural gas pipeline should have already been put in from Prudhoe Bay.
It should have already been in place. The pricing for liquid gas pipeline and the stuff that we could pass through to balance all of the excess liquid gas we have building up, that should be put in place. It's an investment that we have into the state that we see a return.
Branch off to all the rural villages that
meanwhile,
no longer need to be subsidized.
We're cutting down, becoming more independent, energy independent, and we're seeing the return on our investment. We're seeing the cost drop down for Alaskans. I like that. I think that we should see some of our own fuel. We know it funds Alaska. We should demand that, no, part of our royalty of our oil is that we want to see a decreased cut. You know, there's no reason that we need to pay these, you know, extremely high prices for the oil of our own resources.
Katovik, the very top uppermost, if you were to stand in front of the state map directly in front of you, and you got Juneau down over here towards your right. Katovik sits up over at the very, very top right-hand corner of the map.
Circle.
And they're actually up higher than Barrow and Katovik, so are Uvatovic, and Katovik is actually the highest point in Alaska where you could be living at. The locals there call their town Bartertown, because they're kind of like a hub, like Bethel is for the outer communities. This is where they all come into. It's the only major airport in the area that can handle international type planes.
Right.
So they were all excited. Trump announced all the drilling is now opened up. We're opening up all this offshore drilling.
The rail, we need to get our rail going so we can transport
was bouncing
resources
through the roof. Hold on, let me finish.
Yeah.
They're bouncing through the roof. I mean, they're all excited. Now they can finally drill into that offshore oil, and they can get off of government welfare for their survival, and they'll actually be independent. If they would have been able to get it done, they had just started the investigations and everything else to find where they wanted to do this at when Biden took office, and shut it all down again on them and put their area back on lockdown to where you can't drill or do anything there ever again at this point in time. So they're going, here went our chance to finally get off the government's teat, and the government takes it back away from them again.
Yeah.
It's
just unbelievable, because it almost looks like we don't want to give that much away, that power at the government. We, as in the government, doesn't want to give that much freedom away, because they know it's almost like it's the power thing. They want to hold that power. part of me is excited, part of me is disappointed in the past, but looking forward, I see nothing but like room to grow because we haven't done that yet. Alaska still is. Our
So what kind of fight?
weak.
What kind of fight are you going to bring to Juneau? I
I'm gonna be hated. You already know that. You know I'm gonna be hated. I'm already hated there. I know my name's floating around and not in a good way. I know that I'm not gonna be liked. And it's unfortunate because I have no malice with this. I'm not trying to like say I'm gonna go burn the place down. I just feel like we can go and use common sense and say like, hey, that's not right. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, and I'm not trying to say I'm gonna ruin your career. But if you've made a career on living off the teat of the state, right?
So so in other words, you're not going to be one of those legislators when you get a chance to speak on a bill when it's on the floor to be passed that just sits there quietly letting all of these same deep-seated incumbents stand up and advocate out there, and then I'm just going to throw the House in here, even though you're running for the Senate, and become that David Eastman that stands up no matter what. And he's always got his 2 cents that he wants to give about whatever is going on there, whether they like what he's saying or not. And I'm not going to say that you're going to be like David Eastman. I mean,
no, but in some ways you say, I know that by taking a stand against what's popular, I know that that's going to rub people wrong. Because, I don't believe in just going and just falling in order like traffic. I'm just going to match the speed of everybody and just fall in line because it's a smooth gig, right? No, that's not why I'm running. And
so when the mental health budget comes up for the final vote, are you going to do like they've done for at least as long as I've been watching Gavel to Gavel now, which is going on 7 years? Are you going to be just like when it comes to that final vote for the mental health budget? They don't even debate it. They don't even talk about it. They just all vote and it's done.
Yeah, we need to talk about it. There's a lot to talk about.
I mean, it makes me so sick to watch that portion of the budget never ever
get
discussed.
And there's a lot of that with different subjects, whether it be native land, whether it be fisheries. People just tiptoeing around because they don't want to ruffle feathers. And I think there's a lot of discourse we can have, like healthcare. Like cutting Medicaid back is going to be, you're the worst person ever. Hey, listen, there's just some practicalities to the actual function of the state government. That's not one of them,
Well, when you look at those 35% of Alaskans, 1/3 of the population, roughly 250,000, roughly, we'll say 1/3. So 250,000 Alaskans are living off of welfare, one form or another. A lot of it's all the expanded health care that they're actually on, not necessarily getting housing and all the other stuff that comes there. But when you look at that population that's actually on it, 15 to 20% of it, and I think it's closer to 20 than 15, are already getting free federal health care because of their race.
Well, and you're
why are we paying 50? I mean, right now it's what, 90% under the Obama expansion. This year, when you go into office, it's going to be 80% matching.
Well, this speaks to what we need to do moving forward. And I know a lot has been put forward and said by some senators already about this, and I applaud them and support them and will support them about cleaning our registration up, our voting registration, which is just completely corrupt. And that's the same thing with our PFD and with our Medicaid. What's our cutoff? We have COVID relief. We have our rules about who qualifies for Medicaid. We need to look at that and say there's some hard lines here. We're going to start cutting people off. With our PFD, we see that you've moved out of the state 8 years ago, although you're still getting it somehow. We got to cut that off. We got to see our voter registration. I would be in favor of needing to register to vote each time that we have an election. That's pretty simple. It just puts the burden on the voter, and that's okay.
Voter rolls need to be cleaned up.
100%.
I mean, that's what got me ostracized from the Republican Party. And they in 2020, I exposed a major corruption that was going on within our own Mat-Su Valley's Republican Party. And I was exposed felons voting in our elections. Had voted 9 years in a row.
The numbers don't match up.
It really does, and it wasn't my stink that stopped that. It was actual legislator that filed a bill down in Juneau that went back and looked at if you have a felony, are you voting in our elections, that put a stop to that. But knowing that they did vote 9 times and we lose elections by a one
very,
vote,
very small
or
margin.
in one case, a flip of a coin decided the election.
Yeah.
This is,
No, we need to look at it. And, you know, I can't imagine, well, I can't imagine, unfortunately.
So what do you
would
think about
oppose
the
that.
Mat-Su Valley going to hand count only
I
in
love it.
2023?
I love it. I think that, you know, my election process that I had kind of outlined in my mind was that we would have an election holiday, that we would have hand-counted paper ballots, get out machines, that the process would be monitored by precinct, by voter volunteers, which are vetted, and
So
that's fine.
The first Tuesday in November,
yeah, and you can have absentee ballots.
A day off for everybody. It will be just like the 4th of July or Christmas.
Correct. It would be a way to do it to where you could have voting on single day, because what everybody hates, myself included, is, you know, when you're watching the results come in and all of a sudden at like 1 o'clock in the morning, the count stops and all of a sudden they're like, hey, all right, we'll get back to you. And it's like 95% of the vote is in. Yep. And you know that last 5% is where they do wiggle stuff. You know, they do all the bad stuff in that last 5%. No, we want all of the votes, and you can hand out absentee or, you know, ballots by mail. You can do that, but the rules can be really tight for it, saying this is, you have to really prove that you need this, and it's for a select group, right? And that's okay, and they have to be in 2 weeks before so that we can count them, right? Not like up to the election and we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. No, they have to be in on X date, but then we have in location, in person, voter ID, you know, paper ballots that are hand counted after their, you know, the voting stops. That's how we do it in a single day. And
well, we used to, and then I mean, we've in Alaska, we've always had mail-in voting for our military, and for our seniors that are in homes and stuff like that. We've always had mail-in voting available for them. And then Anchorage was like the big thorn in my back. This is when I first started reporting on politics. One of my first videos I had ever uploaded was about the new mail-in voting only in their elections.
Just so nuts.
And you can see it now. I mean, the school boards, the assembly members that are being elected.
People getting ballots that aren't even in the state. It's just...
And they're voting.
It's just, it's wrong. But, you know, I'm really hopeful that this sets the example for how it can work. So my fingers are crossed that this is a smooth process. I think it will be. And if it works well, I'm hoping we can take it and present and say, this is how to do it right here.
Yeah, the Mat-Su, we know our election results as of the night of the actual election. We're done. There's only a few stragglers. We're just waiting on the military overseas vote.
When I heard that they were going to do that, I was so supportive.
The only reason why the military overseas vote would even matter at that point is because you got a race that's like within 10 to 20 votes apart from each other, and those could really change things. Not this. We still have 100,000 more to go that were mailed in.
We're going to tell you next Tuesday. We'll keep you updated. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
I mean, to hear the Democrats right now are pushing it across their pages right now. Early voting is out there. If you already haven't casted your absentee ballot, here's your chance to do it now.
It's true. And I don't like early voting. I think a lot can happen in 2 weeks, you know. And you know, I've always been a fan of one voting day that you vote in person, and you know, there's no conceivable reason that you shouldn't have voter ID, you know, mandated. That's just beyond me. But I mean, and all that's pretty common sense. There isn't anybody.
But it's racist, isn't it?
It's voter suppression.
You gotta have a voter ID.
Yeah, I haven't met too many people, especially in the Valley, that have any qualms with that. You know.
I don't know anybody that has a problem showing their ID. I mean, even when they forced us to do this special election for the Congress seat, and it was mail-in only, I remember I'm going, I was one of those that waited for the very last day, not realizing that the post offices were out here in the valley. There's very few that are actually open on a Saturday. And to get that certified stamp that you mailed it on that date. And I remember the clerk that was sitting there, and I go, "Do you mind witnessing my ballot for me?" And I've never done a mail-in in my entire life, so I'm trying to make sure I cross all those T's, dot all those I's.
It's got to be perfect, yeah.
And she goes, "Well, I think you're about the 300th person today that's asked me to do that."
I've witnessed a lot of them.
Not a problem. And I looked at her and I go, "That's just today?" I said, "You should have seen what yesterday was like."
You know, the other thing about ranked choice voting, I've talked to tons of people. I've explained it to tons of people about ranking the red, about, Lisa Murkowski and not voting for her only Kelly. And I've talked to tons of people and felt like I've done a really good job. And then after I explain it, they say, "I'm going to be honest, it doesn't make sense to me still." That's what everybody says. And they say, "I'm not going to do that." Nope. That's what people are saying. They don't like it. Alaskans don't like it.
We're going to... Here's my prediction of what's going on right now. Your race is different. Because you guys are all Republicans.
I don't know what's going to happen with us. I can't imagine anybody. I think there's something intuitively wrong with voting for someone that you don't want to win. There's something intuitively wrong, whether it makes sense strategically, and people that are involved can really overthink the individual voters, what they're going to do.
Well, see, I look at your current race right now to be more like what the primary was like in 2020 in this same race. And back then, the current incumbent legislator or senator was my senator. So in that primary, we had several Republicans running against him, and it was 3 Republicans altogether, kind of very similar to what we have going on here. But if it was ranked choice, the current incumbent wouldn't be in office.
That's correct.
So here we're in this race right now, which is very similar to the circumstances of that primary there. And I'm afraid, because people not understanding ranked choice are going to look at it and go, "Well, I like Scott Clayton. He's got my number 1. I don't like Stephen Wright. I don't like David Wilson. And so I'm not going to vote for either one of them." Or they're vice versa. Someone goes, "I like Stephen Wright more than I like Scott Clayton, but I don't like Scott because he doesn't sound like a team player. And David Wilson has burned me one too many years in a row. He's not even going to be ranked at all."
It speaks to, there's something intuitively wrong to vote for someone that you don't want to win. Whether it's strategic, it's the greater of two evils, doesn't matter. It's just there's something wrong about circling, like this or that for second.
Well, I wish I would have pulled it out. I took a plane flight to Sitka here the other day for work.
Yeah.
And while I was on the plane, I decided to borrow, or I should say take one of their items that most people normally just leave in their seat. And I took the barf bag. And if I would have thought of it, I would have had it sitting here next to me right now. But when it comes to ranking the red out there, and I'm going to use the Senate or the Congress seat as the example.
Please.
So we've got Begich, we've got Palin, and we've got Mary there. And we've got to pick our poison of who we want to go into Congress, and it's between those 3, no hands down about it. So I've kind of reason why I picked up the barf bag is I want to point out to all of those people out there that are watching, when it comes time for ranking the votes out there, whether you like Palin or you like Begich and can't stand either Palin or Begich,
you got to rank them both.
You got to rank them both.
You got to rank them.
And so my philosophy is, and why I picked up the barf bag to begin with is you pick the one that you like the most, and you happily, cheerfully do your little jig as you mark them down on your ballot. This is my number 1 choice. Then you reach conveniently into your pocket. You pull out the clothesline nose clippers and you put it onto your nose. You pull out your barf bag, and as you're filling out the ranking for the second candidate of either Begich or Palin,
exactly right.
you let loose and still fill in that oval.
That's exactly right.
Otherwise, Mary is going to Congress again.
No, that's exactly right. If we don't, it's so strategic how they've implemented this, and it's clear that it's dark money that has influenced this for that exact purpose. They know that they can divide the strength of the conservative vote in Alaska by doing that. I'm hoping that the special election was enough to shake conservatives and say, if you don't do this, this is what's going to get into office. And it's confusing because it's race specific. We're saying not to do it with Lisa Murkowski, but to do it with Sarah Palin. It doesn't matter how clear. See, I know because I'm involved and I am participating, and most people, they don't care. They just know that Lisa Murkowski is bad, and they like this person, so they're just going to bullet vote. So we'll see. This is going to be a very interesting race, both in the state and at the state level with our legislature. But I'll give you one more, and then I got to run.
Okay. One last question. Oh
Yeah.
man, this has got to be a doozy. Alaska's transportation system.
Yeah.
We've got an open door policy out there right now that says our doors are closed. They're not open. You mentioned the railroad earlier today. We haven't touched anything upon the ferry system, which I'm dragging into the conversation now. And then we've got the Arctic Passage that is open, and but we've got no icebreakers to actually operate up there. And no matter how much I keep hearing we've got them coming, when I compared them to China, who has, I believe, 30 icebreakers at their disposal to use anywhere way they want, and they live on the equator. And we, as Alaska, have one
coming.
Where do we stand at for Alaska legislators, anyways? Power to leverage opening up our transportation system. I mean, the rail belt needs to be expanded. That is a guaranteed. If we're going to keep Alaska growing and opening up, we got to get that railroad put in. I'm tired of paying for the welfare ferry system that we have here in our state, and it needs to be turned into a for-profit business, not a welfare handout for the minority, where those that live in the North Slope that have to pay airfare instead of having a ferry to get to and from are paying full price.
Correct. Well, so this goes back to, we need to invest in our state that it's behind. I mean, that's clear. It's clear that our infrastructure is just lacking throughout the entire state, whether it be the Jones Act, that we're not bringing industry up to Alaska. I've had talks with a couple people in different industries, Intel shopping states recently about where they wanted a manufacturing plant for their new chips. Why not Alaska? We have the blue collar, we have the industries that we can bring them up here. Amazon, why aren't we opening the doors to Alaska saying, come up here? We need to be the new state for industry. We have all the resources they need. We have the land, we have the workers that can work this. It feels like we're self-destructing. We have the minerals. Yeah, no, it feels like we're self-defeating, that we're defeating ourselves. We're keeping the doors closed, and mainly because our focus is on things that really don't matter. Personal agendas, whether it be, pick an item that just the state government shouldn't be doing. Meanwhile, our rails are falling apart, our ports are falling apart. We're not investing in new streets and growth, and inviting companies, making industries less regulated so that they can come and operate.
Well, as we've learned, anything that government operates is bound to fail and always cost more money to keep it open. So
the funniest point, this isn't about state, this is just a federal point, but ask anybody in the military about government-funded healthcare, and it's just hilarious. They're pitching these ideas for government-funded. Oh, we need government-funded healthcare. We've had it.
Look how well
you
it's
don't
worked for our
want it. You don't want it.
Why are Alaskan Natives or American Indians going to Medicaid for their first providers
Yeah.
instead of their own federal government provided
Exactly.
health care?
No, yeah, exactly. So anybody that has it doesn't want it, you know? No, it'll be better if we do it.
Socialized medicine works so well, then why aren't these people using it?
Yep.
I mean, if it wasn't for Trump, our veterans would still be getting subpar health care.
I agree.
I mean, Trump is the one that opened it up to where now they can go to private practices if they're not being helped fast enough by the veteran organizations anymore.
Agreed.
Made it available so that they can actually get Medicaid, which they were not allowed to do if they were getting veteran health care.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to subsidize each one and go from provider to provider to provider, specialist-wise. My dad had to leave the state of Alaska. That's why I helped him move out of state way back when. Was because the health care that he needed couldn't be provided here in Alaska. The closest facility was in Seattle.
Mm.
And so when he decided to move, he says, all right, I'm moving out of state. Sorry, son, you can come with me. I spent about 9 months traveling with them.
It's sad that we don't have the infrastructure to keep people like that, you know?
Yeah. And he was a master of what I classify as a master of all trades. But
so many Alaskans are. And they don't want to live here anymore if it's going to change like this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm skilled in many different skill sets, but I'm so heavily regulated by government, I can't use my skill sets.
Yeah.
If you're in a building that's not attached to a firm foundation, I can do your electrical, I can do your plumbing, I can do all of your construction needs from the ground up, and I have no problem doing it. But the minute you put me into a fixed building, I now got to be a certified plumber. I now got to be a certified electrician. I can't touch any of your stuff. My job stops at the outlet at the wall, the plumbing connected there, and I'm not allowed to touch a nail in your wall for your because I'm not part of the carpenters union to do that.
It's a shame.
And so that was my last burning question for you. And I'm going to switch this over to a single screen with just you in front of it. This is, as the Michael Dukes Show always likes to put it, this is your 30 seconds of fame to tell why people should vote for you, how to contact you, where they can find more information about why you're running, or maybe more solid answers to different pieces of your plan for the future, and just give your elevator pitch, as he always puts it. But unlike the Michael Dukes Show, there is no time limit, so take as much time as you like.
Well, no, that's great. You know, I know that I'm new to all of this, and I think in some ways that's refreshing. So I'll make it easy and just say I'm going to give you all of my information, whether it be my website, my Facebook. I'm going to put it in the link here, and we'll just have it be that way. But so you can find it on this link. I'll share the links here. But I don't have a secret agenda. I don't have this alternative motive that I'm coming in to do. I just see problems with our education system that I want to actively work on and improve for my kids, for your kids, to create better outcomes for our students, for Alaska. And the byproduct of that as well, all the other issues that we face, I'm just right down the line conservative, and I don't have any reason to not be and not vote those hard votes and stick up for what I believe. I just, the race is not important enough to compromise on my values. That's a big thing. But I take calls all the time from people that want to know specific questions, and they call and just ask things. I'm always welcome to do that. I like talking to people. It informs me about what issues are important for Alaskans, so please feel free to call me. My number is 907-350-9650, and I give that out, my personal cell phone number, so that if you have questions, call me, we'll talk. And just like this, you can ask me specific questions, and I'll try the best to answer them the best I can. And if I don't know them, I'll tell you. You know, I don't know that. I'm going to go study up, learn about it, and then give you my position about where I stand. But I think more often than not, you'll find that I'm doing the best I can, and that, you know, I want Alaska to be great and to do. We have a lot that we could do in the state, but that's my pitch. I mean, it's not fancy. It's not a fancy pitch, but I appreciate the time.
I appreciate your time. It's really good to talk with you. Don't forget, this is rank vote choice voting here on November 8th. And because we are in the Mat-Su Valley, this is also borough elections. And we also have a ballot on the borough election ballot that we got to vote on, kind of like ballot measure 1 that we have for the state level for convention, yes. And then we have here in the Mat-Su Valley, we also have the vote on for guns being shot, any legislation or any ordinances that are to be passed here in the Mat-Su Valley. It goes in regards to guns, it will go to the vote of the people before any ordinance can be passed. That way we don't have FUBARs like we had a couple of years ago that the current assembly reversed for the gun ranges and all the controversy that had caused. So that is why that ballot measure is there. Also, it's school board and assembly members that are also being voted on here on November 8th. So the Valley's ticket is going to be full. And don't forget, you will have count them, 2 ballots to fill out on. And again, thank you, Matt, or Scott.
Yeah, you bet.
Scott Clayton, Senate District D.
District N.
N. Oh man, I've had the wrong one up there this entire time.
You're totally fine. It was the old district, so it's new district, Senate N.
Okay, well then because I took that directly off of the election site, and they still have you down as D, not as N. I'll redouble check that, but I'm pretty sure it was D when I looked at it, because that's where I got it from.
Yeah.
And so Senate District N, we'll get that corrected there. And then I wish I could change the heading above the top of our names.
You're good.
Here.
You're okay.
And then this is rank vote choice voting. And if I was in your district right now, I would be ranking you as number 1. And then I would be putting Stephen Wright as my number 2 pick. And then I would be leaving my 3rd choice completely blank. Because when that senator was in my district, I tried to make sure that he didn't get sent back down to Juneau. It just wasn't as successful as I wanted to be. And so I wish you the best of luck, and I really do appreciate your time here today.
Of course.
And I'm going to now give my audience my 30-second elevator pitch, and then we'll head on out from there. So thank you all for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't liked and shared this video, why not? What is your problem? You are the reason why we are not changing the dynamics going on down there in Juneau, and why we keep electing the swamp back into it instead of electing people that are working or want to work for all Alaskans. And we really have an opportunity here to change one of the legislators going to Juneau that represents the Mat-Su Valley. So again, if it was me voting at this particular moment in time, Scott Clayton would have my number 1 pick, and Stephen Wright would have my number 2. And I would leave the 3rd person in the race, David Wilson, would not even be making the ticket this year. So hopefully you can pick your choices out there. If you like Stephen more than Clayton, please rank Stephen Wright number 1. Scott Clayton, number 2, and David Wilson, again, leave him off of the ticket. Rank the red, not the Democrat hiding in sheep's clothing. Thank you all for being here once again. Like and share this video. And please go and follow and subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook here at Politadick, and Facebook at Politadick Unfiltered. And also go to rumble.com and /Politadick, obvious answer there, we're all Politadick everywhere, and follow and subscribe to us there. I believe we're about 75 more people away from being able to live stream directly to Rumble, and it will be your guys' support and effort of doing that few seconds it takes to subscribe and like us there, so that we can be able to get up there and start live streaming videos like this one to all of you, unfiltered, uncut, and uncensored. While we're live, you can always find us on our website at politadick.com. Currently, this video is streaming on our website. If you didn't know that, you could be watching it there. And if you are on our website, take a moment, go and click that support button and make a donation. Your proceeds is what makes this possible to be able to do things like this, makes it so that I can be able to travel to different locations, stream things like the convention, conversation between Senator Hughes and Showers here just last week. And it's your contribution, your guys' support that makes that all possible. One day I want to be found all over the state, whether it's at an assembly, community council, school board meeting, I don't care where it is happening within our state, in the Juneau halls. I would like to be there or have someone else there live streaming it all to us, unfiltered and uncut. The only way we're going to expose the agenda going on in our state and take back control is to make sure we all know what's going on, unfiltered, uncut, and without the 30-second spin from our corrupt mainstream media that we have out there in control of our state right now. Again, thank you all for being here today, and again, like and share.